Welcome to the Morning English Podcast. Listen, learn, and speak English daily.
Have you ever felt that sudden sharp knot in your stomach?
Oh, I know exactly what you're talking about. It's awful.
Right. You know the exact feeling. It usually hits right when you're looking at your phone and you see a specific name pop up on the screen.
Yes. Or maybe when a certain coworker casually strolls over and stops by your desk.
Exactly. It's that physical, visceral reaction that happens because you simply, you do not know how to say no.
It is a universally understood form of paralysis, really.
Totally. Or maybe you're feeling completely overwhelmed by someone's constant tiny requests and you realize.
You actually just lack the words to make it stop.
Yes. You want to push back, but the vocabulary just isn't there in your brain.
It's that awful moment where the cost of saying yes is your own sanity and your own time.
Yeah.
But the cost of saying no feels like you are about to, ruin a relationship, start a massive conflict, or just be perceived as a terrible person.
And that tension, that exact moment of panic where you are frantically searching for the right words is exactly what we are getting into today.
It's a great topic.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. We are so glad you're here with us. Today, we are looking at a document that teaches you how to survive a toxic workplace.
And how to handle a guilt-tripping family member.
Right, and how to stop your friends from walking all over you. And honestly, the crazy part.
Oh, this is the best part.
It is, ostensibly, a 101 level English language learning guide.
On the surface, it really does look like a standard curriculum document for English as a second language.
Yeah, like something you'd see in a beginner's classroom.
Exactly. It has practice dialogues, it has vocabulary lists, it even has a little multiple choice quiz at the end to test comprehension.
But when you actually read the content, the scenarios the authors chose to highlight, wait, let me rephrase that. The highly specific vocabulary they're teaching, it completely transcends basic grammar.
It really does. It functions as an absolute masterclass in the psychology and the mechanics of setting personal boundaries.
It turns out teaching someone how to say no politely in a brand new language is like the absolute perfect framework for teaching anyone how to set healthy limits in their life.
Which makes perfect sense when you think about it, because for a lot of people, setting a boundary is speaking a foreign language.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that's so true.
They have literally never been taught how to do it. By formatting this as an ESL lesson, it completely removes the emotional baggage.
And the guilt, right? The guilt we normally attach to boundaries.
Exactly. It breaks the concept down into simple structural components. Like, here are the phrases, here is the required tone, here is the situational context.
It treats boundaries as a highly practical skill to be learned and practiced.
Right. Rather than some abstract personality trait that you were just, magically born with.
So our mission for this deep dive is to unpack this source's incredibly clear definition of what boundaries actually are.
We're going to explore exactly why they're critical for our well-being.
Yeah, because the text gives us 4 major reasons that are just incredibly profound. And then, most importantly, we're going to learn the practical vocabulary it provides.
The exact English phrases you can use to respectfully enforce your limits in everyday life.
It is highly actionable material.
Yeah.
But to truly understand how to use these phrases, we first need to establish what it actually means to draw these invisible lines.
We have to start with the foundational definition the text provides.
Let's look at how the source starts. It clearly defines personal boundaries as, quote, the limits and rules we set for ourselves in relationships.
The limits and rules.
Right. It says they define our personal space, our emotional limits, and our comfort zone. Now, reading that, the word that jumped out at me immediately was rules.
It is a really strong word, and honestly, it is usually the word that makes people tense up.
Totally.
When we hear rules applied to human relationships, it sounds incredibly rigid.
Yeah, it sounds like you're handing your partner a legal contract or something.
Exactly. We are conditioned to think that relationships, whether with friends, family, or romantic partners, should just be organic and free-flowing.
We think that if you really love someone, or if you are a really good team player at work, you shouldn't need rules.
But the source is arguing the exact opposite.
Completely the opposite.
The reality is every single system in the world requires parameters to function smoothly, and human connection is the most complex system of all.
So without rules, you don't have freedom. You have chaos.
Right. The text is establishing that setting a rule is not a punishment for the other person. It is an instruction manual for how to successfully interact with you.
Which brings us to the 4 major reasons the text gives for why expressing these boundaries is so essential. And the very first one they list is self-respect.
Yes, self-respect.
The text says verbatim, when you set boundaries, you show that you value yourself.
That phrasing is incredibly deliberate. Notice it says you show that you value yourself.
Because it's an action.
Exactly. We so often think of self-respect as a purely internal feeling. We think, I know my worth, I respect myself.
Right, like it's just a state of mind.
But the source frames it as an external action. Setting the limit actively demonstrates the value you place on your own time and energy.
Because if you never say no, what are you actually demonstrating to the people around you?
You are essentially broadcasting to the world that your needs are secondary to everyone else's.
Wow. Yeah.
You are teaching them that your time is less valuable than their convenience.
Let's use a real-world example here. Like if a colleague drops a massive project on your desk at 4:55 p.m.
The classic late Friday afternoon dump.
Right, and you just sigh and stay until 8:00 p.m. to finish it without a single word of protest.
You haven't just lost your evening in that scenario.
You've actively trained that colleague that your personal time has absolutely no value.
You are training people how to treat you.
Precisely. The boundary is the physical manifestation of self-respect.
And that leads directly into their second reason, which almost feels counterintuitive at first glance.
Oh yeah, I remember this part.
The text notes that boundaries are essential for healthy relationships, stating that they help prevent misunderstandings and conflicts.
It feels counterintuitive because, most people avoid setting boundaries specifically because they are terrified of starting a conflict.
Exactly. They think, if I tell my friend I can't help them move this weekend, they will be mad at me and we will fight.
Right. So we just say yes when we desperately want to say no.
And what happens?
We show up on Saturday morning to help them move. We are exhausted. We are annoyed. And we spend the entire day quietly building up resentment.
Yes, exactly.
We are slamming boxes down, giving short answers, and suddenly we are just mad at our friend for asking in the first place.
When really you should be frustrated with yourself for not setting the boundary.
Right, because they just asked. They didn't force you.
Exactly. The resentment you feel isn't actually about the moving boxes. The resentment is the symptom of the missing boundary.
That makes so much sense.
What the source is arguing here is that setting boundary is not an act of hostility. It is an act of relationship preservation.
That is a massive perspective shift.
It changes everything. By telling you no today, I'm ensuring that I still have the emotional capacity to be your friend tomorrow.
Wow. Let me just pause on that. I'm ensuring I have the emotional capacity to be your friend tomorrow.
Yeah, because if I don't say no, I will eventually grow to resent you, and the relationship will erode anyway.
The text is teaching the learner that clarity prevents the conflict from ever taking root.
Which ties perfectly into the third reason the text outlines, which is mental well-being.
Right. The text states that boundaries act to protect you from stress, pressure, and emotional exhaustion.
They use the concept of a comfort zone almost like a protective barrier.
Like a psychological shield.
Exactly. Emotional exhaustion, what we commonly call burnout, doesn't usually happen from one massive catastrophic event.
It's rarely just one big thing.
It happens from 1,000 tiny, unchecked boundary violations.
It's the accumulation of, just 5 more minutes.
Or, can you just do this one quick favor?
Or, I know it's late, but...
It's death by 1,000 paper cuts.
That's exactly what it is.
Mm-hmm.
And without that shield in place, you become a sponge.
You absorb all of the external pressure, anxiety, and urgency of everyone around you.
The text is explicit that protecting your mental well-being is not a luxury. It is a fundamental requirement.
And the boundary is the mechanism that provides that protection.
Which brings us to the fourth and final foundational reason. And this one is just purely practical.
Clear communication.
Right. The source says that when you set boundaries, people understand what you need and expect. It eliminates the guesswork.
We have a terrible habit of expecting the people in our lives to be mind readers.
Oh, I am so guilty of this.
We all are. We
Yeah.
sit at our desks drowning in work and we think, well, my boss should know I'm too busy to take on this new account.
Or we think, my partner should know I need an hour to decompress after work.
But they don't know.
You cannot possibly know. They are living inside their own reality, dealing with their own pressures and their own narratives.
If you do not verbally communicate the limit to them, they have absolutely no way of knowing they have crossed it.
The text is teaching that relying on unspoken expectations is just a recipe for disaster.
Okay, so looking at all four of these foundational concepts, self-respect, preventing conflict, shielding our mental well-being, and establishing clear communication.
It actually made me think of a way to visualize this whole concept. because as we discussed, the word boundary can sometimes sound so harsh to people.
It does. It sounds like you're building a massive brick wall.
A concrete fortress designed to keep the entire world out.
Right.
And if you view a boundary as a brick wall, of course you're going to feel guilty building it.
Naturally.
But reading through this ESL guide, that's not what they are describing at all. It feels much more like, well, like property lines.
Property lines, I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Imagine you own a beautiful piece of land with a house and a garden. A boundary isn't a 10-foot concrete wall blocking the sun. A boundary is just a really clear, well-maintained picket fence.
Okay, I see where you're going.
And crucially, that fence has gates. It has doors.
That is a very useful way to picture it. The fence defines the space.
Exactly. The fence isn't there to say no one can ever come into my yard. The fence is there to simply show everyone else exactly where the public street ends and your private property begins.
And the gates are there to show them how to safely interact with your property.
Right. It's a way of saying you are absolutely welcome to come into my yard and enjoy the garden with me. But you have to come through the front gate.
You have to knock on the door.
And you absolutely cannot come trampling through my flower beds at 3 a.m.
You aren't keeping people out. You are just showing them the correct, respectful way to engage with you.
Exactly.
That analogy holds up incredibly well when you look at the text's emphasis on communication.
How so?
Think about walking through a neighborhood that has absolutely no fences, no sidewalks, and no clear lines between the street and the grass.
That sounds confusing.
It is. If you were taking a walk, you wouldn't know where to step. You would be constantly anxious about accidentally walking across someone's prize-winning lawn or stepping on their flowers.
You would be tiptoeing everywhere, terrified of making a mistake.
Precisely. The lack of rules actually creates anxiety.
Oh, wow. That is a great point.
When the fence is clear and visible, I know exactly where I can walk safely. I know I am not intruding.
By providing clear boundaries, by building that visible fence, you actually make the people around you feel more comfortable and secure.
Because they no longer have to guess where your lines are, they won't accidentally step on your toes.
So, if we're going to build this fence to protect our property, we first have to understand the different zones that actually exist within our lives.
We have to know what we are trying to enclose.
So that leads us organically into the next major section of the curriculum. The text doesn't just say protect yourself. It maps out 4 highly specific territories.
The 4 pillars of personal limits. Breaking the abstract concept of a boundary down into these 4 distinct categories is brilliant pedagogy.
It really is. It makes a massive psychological task feel highly manageable for the learner.
Let's look at the first territory we need to fence in. Physical boundaries.
The source defines this quite simply as personal space, touch, and privacy.
And the example phrase they provide for the student to practice is, I don't feel comfortable with that.
Now, this seems like the most obvious one, but it covers so much ground.
It is the most primal boundary we have, but physical boundaries extend far beyond just avoiding unwanted touch.
Like what else?
It is about the physical environment you need to feel secure. It's about a coworker who stands uncomfortably close to your chair while you are trying to type.
Ugh, the hoverer. I hate that.
Exactly. Or it's about a family member who habitually walks into your bedroom without knocking.
Or someone looking over your shoulder to read your computer screen.
It's the right to dictate who occupies your immediate physical radius.
And the phrase, I don't feel comfortable with that, is so incredibly versatile.
It addresses the physical intrusion by focusing on the internal feeling of the person speaking.
Okay, so if the physical boundary protects our body and our physical space, the text smoothly transitions to protecting our internal landscape.
The second pillar, emotional boundaries.
Right. The curriculum describes this as protecting your feelings and your emotional energy.
The practice phrase they give here is, I don't want to discuss this topic.
This is often much harder for people to enforce than physical boundaries.
It really is. Because emotional boundaries require you to recognize that your emotional bandwidth, your capacity to process stress, empathy, and information is a finite resource.
It is not an endless well.
It's the ability to realize that you are running on empty.
And it's the ability to say, I am not in a mental space to hear about this heavy negative problem right now.
It is protecting yourself from a friend who constantly trauma dumps on you without asking if you have the capacity to listen.
Oh, that's a big one.
Or it's protecting yourself from getting pulled into toxic office gossip that you know is going to ruin your focus and your mood for the rest of the afternoon.
The phrase, I don't want to discuss this topic, is so firm, it doesn't leave room for them to say, oh, but let me just tell you this one detail.
It just closes the gate entirely. It is a complete cessation of the emotional drain.
So we have our physical space and our emotional energy. But both of those things are constantly being drained by external demands on our schedule.
Which brings us to the third pillar, time boundaries.
The text defines this as managing your availability and maintaining your work-life balance.
The vocabulary phrase here is, I'm not available after 8 p.m.
Time is the ultimate non-renewable resource.
And this is where the curriculum starts addressing the realities of the modern world. Our time is under constant, relentless siege from employers, friends, family.
And just the culture at large, which completely glorifies busyness.
Which sets up the fourth pillar perfectly.
And I have to say, when I read this section of the text, my mind was genuinely blown by how astutely the authors categorize this.
It's a great distinction.
The text specifically separates time boundaries from the fourth pillar, which they call digital boundaries.
They define digital boundaries as covering social media, messages, and overall online availability.
It is a fascinating structural choice for an English learning guide.
Why did the curriculum designers feel the absolute necessity to separate time from digital?
Well, because historically, those two concepts were completely merged.
Right. If you were off the clock at 5 p.m., you were physically unreachable. Your time boundary and your digital boundary were the exact same thing.
You left the office, and the office could not talk to you unless they literally drove to your house.
But the text explicitly calls out our fast-paced world in its introduction.
Because in today's reality, our digital availability completely bypasses our time boundaries.
Right.
It bleeds directly into our personal time.
Exactly. You can have a rock-solid time boundary. You can tell your boss, I absolutely do not work after 5 p.m.
But if you do not simultaneously have a digital boundary, you are still receiving the emails on your phone.
You are still getting the Slack notifications. The WhatsApp messages are still vibrating in your pocket at 7 p.m., at 9 p.m., at midnight.
To go back to our property analogy, the smartphone becomes a Trojan horse.
Yes.
You built the fence, you locked the front gate, but you brought the demands of the entire outside world straight into your living room and set them on your coffee table.
The notifications bypass the fence completely, and the psychological toll of that is immense.
Your brain cannot fully rest if it knows it is constantly accessible.
The text gives a really specific, almost shockingly aggressive scenario to illustrate this digital boundary.
Oh, I know the one you mean.
It outlines a situation where a friend is messaging the learner too frequently. The example message from the friend is, "Why didn't you reply? I was waiting."
I want to pause on that exact phrasing. Why didn't you reply? I was waiting.
Notice the immense guilt trip embedded in those words.
It is designed to make the receiver feel terrible.
It completely places the responsibility for the friend's emotional state. Their waiting, their impatience, their anxiety onto the shoulders of the learner.
It's such a heavy guilt trip. If I look at my phone and see a text that says, "Why didn't you reply? I was waiting," that knot in my stomach immediately comes back.
You feel like you've done something wrong.
I feel like I've committed a crime by just taking a shower or eating my dinner.
But the suggested boundary response in the ESL guide is just incredible. It teaches the student to be understanding, but relentlessly firm.
The suggested response is, I understand, but I need some time for myself too.
And the alternative phrase they offer is even better. I will reply when I'm free.
I will reply when I'm free. That is a complete, unassailable sentence.
What is so vital here is that having a specific articulated rule for digital messages is the only way to protect your mental well-being in the modern era.
Because we have literally conditioned ourselves biologically and psychologically to view every single ping, buzz, and ringtone as an absolute emergency.
That requires our immediate attention.
We act like every text is a matter of life and death.
We do. Setting a digital boundary breaks that Pavlovian conditioning.
Saying I will reply when I'm free asserts a radical truth. Your timeline, your peace, and your current activity take absolute precedence over the sender's convenience.
It reminds the learner that just because someone can reach you instantly does not mean they are entitled to an instant response.
Okay, so identifying these four distinct territories, our physical space, our emotional energy, our time, and our digital availability, that is the critical first step.
You have to know where your property lines are drawn.
Right, but the real challenge, the thing that actually terrifies people to their core, is the execution.
Yes, actually doing it.
It's opening your mouth and communicating those lines out loud without ruining the relationship.
Because it is one thing to know in your head that you need space. It is an entirely different, incredibly complex skill set to look another human being in the eye and say the words.
Exactly. So let's get into the actual mechanics of the word no.
Let's do it.
The text provides a comprehensive list of practical English phrases, and they break them down by function. Let's look at the first category, which they title Saying No Politely.
They give phrases like, I'm sorry, I can't do that right now. I'd prefer not to. And that doesn't work for me.
Let's analyze these because there's a lot packed in here.
I want to look closely at, I'd prefer not to. From a linguistic and psychological standpoint, that is a spectacularly effective phrase.
Why does that specific combination of words work so well?
Because it is inherently unarguable. Think about what happens when you say, I can't. If someone asks you to do a favor and you say, I can't, you are citing a lack of ability or a lack of time.
Right.
The other person can immediately argue with your logistics. They can say, what do you mean you can't? It will only take 10 minutes.
Or you can't do it today? Fine. How about tomorrow?
Exactly. I invites them to solve the problem of your unavailability.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Yeah.
Sounds like a scheduling conflict that they can fix.
Exactly. But if you say, I prefer not to, you have shifted the boundary from a logistical issue to an internal state.
And they cannot argue with your preference.
They cannot tell you what you prefer. By using the conditional would prefer, it softens the delivery. It sounds very polite, but conceptually, it is an absolute iron wall.
It shuts down all negotiation.
It does.
That is brilliant.
Yeah.
The phrase that doesn't work for me functions the exact same way.
It's a complete stop.
It doesn't say why it doesn't work. It just states the fact.
Then the text moves to the next category, expressing feelings.
Here, they teach phrases like, I feel uncomfortable when, or I need some space.
Notice the grammatical structure there. These are I statements rather than you statements.
The text is very careful not to teach the student to say, you are making me uncomfortable.
Instead, it is, I feel uncomfortable.
What is the difference in impact there, practically speaking?
Well, you are making me uncomfortable is an accusation. The immediate reaction of the listener will be defensiveness.
Right, they will say, I'm not doing anything.
But I feel uncomfortable is a report on your own internal emotional state. Again, it is unarguable.
It drastically reduces the defensiveness in the listener and keeps the conversation focused on the boundary, not on assigning blame.
The third category is setting limits. They offer phrases like, I can help, but only for a short time, or I need to finish my work first.
And finally, the category of asking for respect, with phrases like, please respect my decision, or that's important to me.
These phrases are the essential building blocks of assertiveness.
But the curriculum understands that simply memorizing the vocabulary is not enough. You have to know how to deploy it correctly, and you have to know what traps to avoid.
Which is why the sources section on common mistakes is perhaps the most illuminating part of the entire document.
I completely agree. Let's dig into these mistakes because this is where I actually found myself wanting to push back a little on the text at first.
Really? Tell me about that.
The source explicitly lists over-explaining as a major mistake. It tells the student to absolutely avoid giving long excuses and instead commands them to use short and clear statements.
And you felt resistance to that advice.
I really did. Because honestly, isn't it just human nature to want to justify your no?
It is very common, yeah.
If I tell a friend that I can't go to their dinner party, it feels incredibly rude to just look at them and say, I'd prefer not to.
Right, it feels too blunt.
I feel this intense, burning need to soften the blow. I want to explain to them that I had a really rough week at work, and my dog is feeling sick, and my car is making a weird noise, and I have a headache.
You're trying to build a case.
Exactly. Don't all those explanations show that I actually care about them and that I'm not just rejecting them for fun?
It is an incredibly common trap, and your reaction is completely natural. The desire to over-explain stems from a genuine desire to be polite and to preserve the relationship.
So why is it a mistake?
The ESL text is absolutely correct in identifying this as a critical mistake. And if we look at the mechanics of conversation, we can see exactly why. Over-explaining actually weakens your boundary to the point of collapse.
Explain how that works. Because in my head, explaining myself makes me sound nicer.
You feel like you are softening the blow, but what you're actually doing functionally in the conversation is presenting the other person with a list of obstacles to overcome.
Obstacles.
When you give a long, detailed excuse, you are no longer setting a boundary. You are opening a negotiation. You are inviting a debate.
Okay, wait. Walk me through how that debate plays out in real life.
Let's use your exact dinner party example. You want to say no, but you feel guilty, so you over-explain.
Oh.
You say, I can't come to the party tonight because my car is making a weird noise and my dog is sick and I'm tired.
Right.
Your friend, who genuinely likes you and really wants you there, immediately shifts into problem-solving mode.
Oh, no.
They say, oh, don't worry about your car at all. I can swing by and pick you up.
See.
And you can just leave the dog inside. We won't be out that late. He'll be fine. And come on, a party will wake you up.
Oh, no. Now I'm completely trapped.
Exactly. You are trapped because you offered up excuses and your friend systematically dismantled every single one of them.
So now I have absolutely no excuses left, but my underlying reality hasn't changed. I still do not want to go.
But if you try to say no now, after they have graciously solved all your problems, it feels infinitely more awkward and rude.
Because now it's just a naked rejection. They offered to help me, and I still have to say no. I essentially handed them the keys to unlock my own gate.
Beautifully put. You handed them the keys. This is precisely why the text advocates for short and clear statements.
Wow.
A short, clear statement like, I'd love to, but I'm really tired today. Maybe another day leaves absolutely no room for debate.
You cannot argue with someone being tired.
You cannot offer to pick up their tiredness in your car. It closes the gate firmly but politely.
And the text pairs this advice on short statements with crucial advice on delivery.
Right. How you say it matters just as much.
It tells the learner that their tone and body language are just as important as the words. It instructs them to speak calmly, use polite words, stay confident, and maintain eye contact.
That combination is the holy grail of communication. A short, clear statement, delivered with a calm tone and confident eye contact, establishes a firm, undeniable limit.
It projects absolute authority over your own life without projecting hostility toward the other person.
The source also outlines two other massive pitfalls, which sit on opposite ends of a behavioral spectrum.
Let's talk about those. The first mistake is being too aggressive. The example they give is someone shouting, "Stop bothering me," instead of calmly saying, "I need some quiet time."
Aggression is almost always the result of a failure to set boundaries earlier.
Really? How so?
When someone shouts, "Stop bothering me," it is rarely about that specific isolated moment. It is usually the result of someone suppressing their needs, suppressing their frustration, and suppressing their exhaustion until they finally erupt.
It's the combination of 50 unspoken boundaries finally exploding all at once.
Right. It's the pressure cooker blowing its lid.
And on the flip side of that spectrum is the mistake of being too passive. The text identifies this as saying, okay, I'll do it, when you absolutely do not want to and don't have the capacity to.
The text says the correct approach is to simply say, I'm sorry, I can't.
So we have passive surrender on one side and aggressive explosion on the other.
The goal that the text is driving its learners toward is the elusive middle ground, being assertive.
Assertiveness is the delicate balance of being confident but polite.
It is respecting your own needs and your own property lines by saying no, while simultaneously respecting the other person's humanity by saying it respectfully.
To see this delicate balance of assertiveness in action, we're going to do something a little different.
We are going to actually dive into the specific real-life simulations the source provides.
The text has practice dialogues, and seeing these English phrases used in context is where the real learning actually happens.
Because it is one thing to read the definition of a boundary. It is another thing entirely to see it play out in a messy human conversation.
Exactly. Role play is an incredibly effective tool for behavioral change, which is why it is a staple of language learning.
It moves the concept from the abstract intellectual part of the mind and forces it into the physical reality of muscle memory.
Let's actually walk through these practice dialogues. I'll read one part and you read the other. We can see how awkward it feels to actually say these words.
Sounds good.
The first scenario is with a friend. We have two characters in the book, Emma and Mark. I will be Emma. Emma says, "Hey, let's go out tonight." And Mark responds,
I'd love to, but I'm really tired today.
and Emma pushes back, which is so realistic. Friends always push back. She says, "Oh, come on. It will be fun."
Notice how Emma tests the boundary. This is a very common, almost reflexive human reaction.
Yeah, testing the fence.
When you erect a new fence, the people in your life will naturally push on it to see if it is sturdy or if it will fall over like it used to.
But in the dialogue, Mark holds the line perfectly. He says, "I understand, but I need to rest. Maybe another day."
And Emma finally accepts it, saying, okay, no problem.
The source points out that the key learning for the student here is to use a polite refusal, stay calm, and offer an alternative.
Offering an alternative like Mark saying maybe another day is a brilliant social lubricant.
Let's look at the mechanics of why that works.
It softens the rejection by sending a very clear secondary signal. It says, I am rejecting this specific invitation tonight, but I am not rejecting you as a person.
Well, that's beautiful.
I still value you, and I still want to spend time with you, just on my own terms when I am rested.
It enforces the boundary while simultaneously maintaining the warmth of the relationship.
Okay, let's look at the second scenario. This one is set at work, which is notoriously the most difficult environment for setting boundaries because your livelihood is attached to it.
A colleague comes up to you and says, "Can you finish this report for me?" What is the response?
You reply, I'm sorry, I have my own deadlines to meet.
The colleague pushes back immediately. It will only take a little time.
Again, we see the other person minimizing the request to overcome your objection. They're trying to make the boundary seem unreasonable.
Right. It'll just take 5 minutes.
Yeah.
But the suggested response in the text is unwavering. I understand, but I can't take extra work right now.
The key learning noted here is to be clear and firm, avoid over-explaining, and stay professional.
What is absolutely critical to notice in this workplace setting is what the curriculum left out.
Yes. You must notice the difference between the friend scenario and the work scenario. Mark offered a different day to his friend.
But with the coworker asking you to do their work, you do not offer an alternative.
Oh, wow, you're right. You don't say, I can't do it today, maybe tomorrow.
Exactly. You do not want to negotiate taking on responsibilities that are not yours. The no needs to be absolute and final.
I can't take extra work right now. Period.
If you offer an alternative to a coworker who is trying to offload their work, you are just delaying the boundary violation, not preventing it.
That is a really subtle but vital distinction in the text.
Okay, let's look at the third simulation, which deals with family. You are in your room with the door closed, and your mother knocks and asks, "Why are you in your room all day?"
You say, I just need some time to relax.
She immediately gets concerned and asks, "Are you okay?" And you reply,
Yes, I'm fine. I just need a little personal space.
Family dynamics are often the hardest place in the world to set boundaries because the historical patterns run so incredibly deep.
They do. Parents, in particular, often struggle deeply to recognize the transition of their children from dependence into autonomous adults who require separate emotional and physical space.
The mother in this dialogue isn't being malicious. She is anxious.
The source notes that the key learning here is to express feelings honestly and to reassure the other person.
The reassurance is the key to making this work.
Saying, yes, I'm fine, directly anticipates and diffuses the mother's anxiety. She is probing the boundary out of care and worry.
By providing that reassurance, you address her underlying emotional concern, but you still enforce the physical boundary of needing personal space.
You are teaching the learner that you do not have to sacrifice your privacy to soothe someone else's anxiety.
I love that. You can be deeply loving, you can assure them that everything is fine, and you can still close the door.
Exactly. You can be loving and still close the gate.
Now, as we are analyzing all these different dynamics, friends, work, family, there is a fascinating warning note in the text that we have to discuss.
Oh, yes, the cultural differences section.
The source includes a vital section titled Cultural Differences. It specifically warns its ESL learners that in some cultures, saying no directly is considered very rude.
This is a massive piece of context for the curriculum to include. It is acknowledging that communication styles and social expectations are not universal.
In many cultures around the world, giving a direct, unvarnished no is seen as deeply offensive.
It is viewed as a disruption of social harmony and an affront to the relationship.
Right. So a learner from one of those cultures might instinctively use evasive language, or say maybe when they mean no, or simply agree to the request and then fail to follow through, all just to avoid the perceived harshness of a direct refusal.
Yes, but the text makes it explicitly clear that in English-speaking environments, being polite but direct is not only acceptable, it is highly appreciated.
It is actually a sign of respect.
It is. In these environments, clarity is kindness. Ambiguity or evasiveness is often viewed as confusing, unreliable, or even passive-aggressive.
So for an English learner coming from a culture where directness is taboo, practicing these boundaries phrases is not just about translating words from one language to another.
It is about overriding a deeply ingrained instinct.
It requires immense bravery to look someone in the eye and say, "I'd prefer not to," when your entire upbringing tells you that is rude.
It is a profound psychological leap. They're learning to navigate a completely new social contract.
To help with that leap, the text offers a final section of advanced expressions.
For listeners who feel comfortable with the basics and want to level up their communication, these phrases are incredibly powerful.
They list sentences like, I need to prioritize myself. That crosses my boundaries. And I value my personal space.
That crosses my boundaries is a very stark, direct phrase. You would deploy that phrase when a boundary has been repeatedly ignored or tested, and you need to forcefully escalate the clarity of the situation.
It removes all ambiguity.
But my absolute favorite phrase on this advanced list is this one. Let's set some clear expectations.
I love this phrase so much because it completely changes the power dynamic of the conversation.
It frames a boundary as a collaborative team effort rather than a personal rejection.
It is highly professional and deeply mature. Let's set some clear expectations.
It shifts the posture from defensive, where you are guarding your property line against an intruder, to constructive.
It says we are going to be interacting, whether as colleagues or roommates, so let's mutually agree on the rules of engagement so that we can both succeed and be comfortable.
It is incredibly disarming.
You could use that phrase with a manager when starting a new project. You could use it with a new roommate when moving in together. You could even use it with a romantic partner.
It is so incredibly versatile.
It is. And as we move through these role plays and examine these advanced phrases, it becomes overwhelmingly clear that mastering this specific vocabulary isn't really about speaking English correctly at all.
The grammar and the syntax are entirely secondary.
It's about navigating the complexity of human connection. It's about knowing how to exist in a demanding world alongside other people without losing yourself in the process.
Precisely. The English language is just the tool being taught. The actual outcome the curriculum is providing is personal agency.
Okay, we have covered a massive amount of ground today. Let's do a comprehensive recap of the core takeaways from this remarkable document.
Personal boundaries are the limits and the rules we set to define and protect our personal space and our comfort zones.
They're not brick walls. They are clear fences with functioning gates.
They are absolutely vital for demonstrating self-respect, for keeping silent resentment out of our relationships, and for shielding our mental well-being from burnout.
We must protect those spaces across 4 distinct pillars: our physical space and privacy, our emotional energy and bandwidth, our finite time, and crucially, in today's constantly connected world, our digital availability.
We have to be able to say, I will reply when I am free.
And setting these boundaries effectively requires us to avoid the 2 extremes of human behavior. We don't want to be aggressively shouting and blowing up at people, but we also cannot passively surrender to every demand.
We want to live in the middle ground. We want to be assertive.
We have to skip the long, drawn-out excuses that just invite negotiation and problem-solving, and instead we must lean on short, polite, direct phrases. I'd prefer not to. That doesn't work for me.
And we must remember to deliver those short, clear lines with a calm tone and confident body language.
Before we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you with a final, provocative thought that is entirely inspired by the true nature of our source material today.
As we established right at the beginning, this document is an English language learning guide.
It literally treats the act of setting personal boundaries exactly like learning a foreign language.
Because for the vast majority of us, regardless of our native tongue, setting boundaries is a foreign language.
Exactly. Think about what you actually have to do when you decide to learn a new language. You have to memorize awkward, unfamiliar phrases.
You have to practice saying them out loud in your room when no one is listening.
You are absolutely guaranteed to make mistakes.
Yeah.
You will use the wrong tone, you will stumble over the words, and you will feel incredibly clumsy and foolish until those words finally start to feel natural in your mouth.
You do not expect to be fluent on day 1 of a language class. You expect it to be difficult.
Right. So what if you applied that exact same grace to your own life?
If you view setting boundaries simply as practicing a new language, rather than viewing it as this terrifying, high-stakes emotional confrontation that you are failing at, how much of the fear or the guilt around saying no might just disappear?
You aren't being mean. You aren't starting a fight. You are just a student practicing your new vocabulary.
It lowers the emotional stakes completely. It gives you the ultimate permission to be a beginner at protecting your own peace.
So we highly encourage you to take the source's actual, literal homework assignment to heart. At the end of the lesson, the curriculum tells its students, write 5 sentences about your boundaries. Practice speaking them aloud.
Try doing that today. Write them down, stand in front of a mirror, and practice saying, I understand, but I can't take that on right now.
Build the psychological muscle memory before you actually need it in a moment of panic.
Exactly. Build that muscle memory so that tomorrow, when you get that text asking for a favor you don't want to do, or a coworker drops a project on your desk at 5 p.m. and you feel that sudden sharp knot in your stomach, you don't freeze.
You don't panic.
Yeah.
You just look at your well-maintained fence, you calmly open the gate, and you confidently use your new vocabulary.
It will change the way you interact with the world.
It really will. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive into the mechanics of boundaries. We hope you feel equipped and a little braver today. We will catch you on the next one.